Life is hard. That's what we say to ourselves. That's what we say to each other. And in many ways, yeah. But what I have learned as I've gotten older is we make it hard. We make it so hard by talking about it and repeating all of the things that are going on in our life. Now, sometimes we need to counsel with one another as to how to go about, getting out of situations. We need legal advice. We need advice from family and friends and pastors, etc. But we make life harder than it needs to be. I was very moved one day when I was reading in the scriptures in Matthew chapter 11. It's red letter because it's Jesus talking. And he says, "All things are delivered to me of my Father. And no man knows the Son but the Father. Neither knows any man the Father save the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son will reveal him." Then these famous verses that we all love, "Come to me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest to your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." The word easy really jumped out at me one day. I'm like, no, it's not that easy, Lord. And you know what I thought? I just called him a liar. It is easy because he says it's easy. And see, we forget that. When we say life is hard and he says my yoke is easy, then we have the wrong yoke. We are carrying things we should not carry. I did a message on care, don't carry. And that is really coming alongside this message because Jesus says, my yoke is easy. It's easy to follow him. He makes it easy because he's the way. Well, we are always wrangling and wrestling to find the right answer, to find the right way, to do the right thing, to figure stuff out. How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to say this to so-and-so and she really needs to hear this? Or how is this going to happen? Okay, that is making life hard. Life is hard because we make it hard. We are in the driver's seat. We are Savior. We are the way. Our truth is truth. And see, this is all a part of taking our cross daily up, picking it up, and nailing the flesh to that cross and saying, we're going to go Jesus's way. We're going to go the way of Jesus. He's the way. We're going to wait upon the Lord and be patient. And we're going to do it his way. Now, if you take on his yoke is loving others more than himself, laying his life down, going the extra mile, turning the other cheek, praying for your enemies. Don't cast your pearls before swine. I always advise that people get into Matthew 5 through 7. Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. Take those 3 chapters and soak in them. Go slowly, chew on it, digest it in your soul, then go over again and have that understanding. It's Jesus interpreting the law of the Lord. Now, we go to attorneys and to jurists, and we go to people in the legal film to interpret the law for us. Jesus interprets the law of God. And the law of the Lord is perfect, it says in Psalm 19. So we need to understand the perfect law of God as it pertains to our soul and as it pertains to our life. Most of the time that we have a problem, it is because we are living other people's lives for them. We're figuring out everything for everybody. Now, mostly women and moms do this, and wives, in those roles, women will do that. Our brains are wired to always be watching over because we're raising kids, and kids need 24/7 attention from birth all the way till probably teens, because even then, when they're starting to become young adults, they still need guidance. But that's when we start letting go, so that by the time they get out of our home, out of college, into a marriage, or whatever they choose to do with their life, and that is their choice, not ours, then we should have already cut the umbilical cord completely. But we do this with friends and family. We make decisions in our head that aren't even ours to decide. Okay? So that is how we make life hard. Was it hard for Jesus to take those nails? Yeah, it was very hard. If you study Gethsemane, where he was praying, if there's any way we could do this, Father, if there's any other way to let this cup pass away from me, let's do that. Okay, but still, not my will, but yours be done. So is it hard? Yeah, there's hard things that happen. I'm not categorizing all of life into hard or easy. That's not even reality. Yes, there's hard things. We have to just understand that his yoke is easy. Again, we take on ourselves that yoke of having to do everything for everyone all the time. Sometimes some women, and I've known many, they do that on their own. I've kind of lost friends at sometimes by saying to them, is that yours to carry? And of course, it was part of their identity, I realized later. It was a pride thing. Look how much I do for others. They won't do it. I have to do it. There's also resentment that starts to make the soul bitter. And you can't even be around them without hearing them pour out the bitterness and the gall. Well, they won't do this, or they're against the government, or they're against the church, or they're against whatever, the system. And they just are looking for people to blame as they gleefully in their soul carry all these things, because look how strong I am. Look how much I have to bear. And that becomes their identity, and it also becomes a matter of pride, which also, if they're resentful, they become sarcastic and mean and biting in the way they speak. These things make the soul rancid. And when you live in that jail cell, you have to live it by yourself. It's a party for one, pity party. And it's really sad. And I've had to separate myself from people that do that, or keep a good, safe distance, because they will pull you down into that rancid pool that they swim in. And before you know it, you've wasted hours listening to stuff that is way in the past. It's over. And they can't change it. Maybe their parents are gone. Maybe their siblings that caused them problems are gone. Maybe the doctors, that misdiagnosed them, or people that did them wrong. It's done. Let's look forward. In fact, Jesus even said, he who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not worthy of me. You're going to plow a very crooked furrow. You know what I'm saying? You got to keep looking forward and let Jesus take care of the past. Let him take care of the effects of your trauma. Let him heal you. He came for the brokenhearted, to set the captives free, to give you oil of joy for mourning, and for a spirit of heaviness. You see, he takes all that onto him, and he did already, actually. And then you take on his yoke, and that is how life gets easy. Because all of a sudden, you're walking in the joy of the Lord. You're like, Jesus, I really love people now. True confessions, I didn't like people at all. Most all my life. I've been looking at these things that people do, And from a very young age, because I studied scripture and was memorizing it from kindergarten on, and I heard it every sermon. I've been sermonized since I was in kindergarten. Actually, since I was born, but I'm talking about kindergarten because that's when I started to have some kind of remembering, ability to remember and retain. But I can tell you all about the Bible. I can tell you just about almost all the stories in it, from cover to cover. And I would match that up with the behavior of people. Oh, how are you this week, so-and-so? Oh, well, I'm not doing so well. And they're sitting in church waiting for church service to begin. And then my dear father he always kept his eyes closed as we would sit in the pew before the service. Because he had the key to the church, so we would set the microphones up. He was the sound guy. We would test all the microphones, get them all set up on the stage, and I would be on the stage and he'd be in the sound booth. And, we did all that. So then we would be sitting there and the organ would be playing before us people were coming in, and before the pastors and the choir would come onto the stage, my dad would be... he'd have his Bible open and his hands crossed in his lap, and he'd had his eyes closed. My mother was turned around talking to so-and-so who just walked in, and everybody had the same pew. We didn't have their names on it, but everybody always just sat in the same place. And my dad was never distracted. And one day when I got older, I said, Dad, why are you always with your eyes closed before the service starts? And without hesitation, he says, I prepare myself for the presence of the Lord, to go into his presence. And I was like, really? He goes, yes, I want my heart correct, so I keep my eyes closed so I'm not distracted by talking to anyone, because this is the sanctuary of the Lord. It may just be physical, but I'm going to, in my spirit, be entering his gates. I want to be thankful as I enter his gates, and I want to have thanksgiving in my heart, and I want to enter his courts with praise, along with the choir and my fellow brothers and sisters in the congregation. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. And so because he always saw these things and gave me pictures, I always could perceive that. And I picked up that habit, or I tried to. It's not always easy. Things change, and I've been into different churches, but it is a posture of understanding that we approach the Lord with fear and trembling, and that we understand that if he speaks, it is truth. And Jesus said, my yoke is easy. He says, I am meek and lowly in heart, and you will find rest to your souls. Why? Because my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So I want to give you a paradigm change, a change of understanding. You've got to see yourself, picture yourself carrying the yoke of Christ, to love him and love others, and then all the things you need are going to be added unto you. Love you.